Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Joe from GadgetryTech.com, and today we're talking about the BenQ EW3280U monitor. This has an MSRP of $799.99, so obviously not the least expensive monitor out there. However, it is a really good monitor. So with that being said, we're going to go over the specs, show you some cool close-ups, and then discuss features and what we like and dislike. So as mentioned, this is a 4K monitor, meaning the resolution is 3840 by 2160. This is an IPS screen with edge array lighting, and it runs at 60 Hertz, and your brightness is 400 nits with a contrast ratio of 1000:1. Great response time is 5 milliseconds, and your color coverage, because of the new panel on here, is 95% DCI P3 coverage. It runs a 10-bit panel, and that earns it a display HDR 400 certification, and of course it can run HDR10. It is mountable. It has a VESA 100 by 100 millimeter mount on the back, and when you look at the resolution and the screen size, you basically get a pixel density of about 137 dpi. As far as inputs go, this has a single DisplayPort 1.2. It has two HDMI 2.0 ports and a USB-C port on the back, which allows you to charge devices at up to 60 watts. So it is a full power and display spec USB-C port, which is great. Monitor's a bit heavy, it weighs 18 pounds, but it's a 32-inch, so that's kind of normal. And what's really nice with the BenQ is it actually comes with a 3-year warranty, so we love that. Now this is an AU Optronics panel. I like to investigate what kind of panels are put on monitors regardless of the price point, because it really gets you a better understanding on the performance beyond the basic features. Now the advantage of this panel is there's actually several. Of course, we already talked about the color reproduction, that 95% is excellent. However, the other advantage here, you have a 178-degree viewing angle from left to right and top to bottom. So if you are running two of these, which is possible because this is a great content work monitor, you won't have picture degradation if you're not perfectly centered on the screen. So the performance is excellent there, and I did check that. You know, I'm obviously running a multi-monitor setup, and if I sit at different angles or I tilt my stand behind it, I still get good picture quality, and it worked well there. Another nice thing I like about this is this panel does not use local or PWM for dimming of the backlight. It uses DC. PWM basically makes the screen flicker at a very specific rate to control dimming. That can trigger headaches or cause problems with some people if they're sensitive to PWM. So DC backlight control is great because that just means there's no problems. You shouldn't have any headaches using this monitor for an extended period of time. Now the BenQ has some features to help further reduce the potential for headaches. We'll get into those features in a moment. That's more on the software side. But as far as specs go, this uses a vertical stripe RGB array, so your pixels are stacked vertically rather than like a honeycomb look, and there's no local dimming, so don't expect pure black performance when you're watching movies like what an OLED would do, of course. So it's not really meant for that, but I just wanted to point out the specs of the panel itself because I think that's important to discuss. Now there's some really cool things about this monitor that I like. One, and it's not something you often see quantified because there's a diffusion rate on the panel. What that means is how much light can it diffuse or absorb, if you will, so you don't have that glare effect. Naturally, if there's no diffusion, you have a lot of glare, which isn't great in mixed office environments or if you have a bright room. However, that tends to produce the sharpest and brightest picture. As you diffuse, you soften the picture and you lose some of that clarity, but you cut back the glare. So it's kind of like a give and take. This monitor has a really good diffuser on it. It doesn't diffuse it by much. I think this is actually closer to 25%. But at the end of the day, if you get really close to that, the pixels are still super sharp and there's minimal glare, like non-existent. You basically have to have the monitor off with a very bright light behind it to even have any kind of reflection back. So I feel like this has the best balance of diffusion and clarity. You factor that in if you're investing this level of money in a monitor. Make sure you have what you need for your environment. Now I mentioned this has a 95% DCI P3 color coverage, which is excellent. That doesn't directly translate into sRGB because it's a different color profile. So this doesn't have an official sRGB mode. However, it does have an emulated mode, which is like the Rec.709, REC 709. You get about 98% sRGB coverage without any calibration. So it gets really close. Conversely, if you have an AMD card, you can always enable sRGB color profile modes on it and bypass the monitor's one. Either way, you get extremely close to 100% even without calibration. So sRGB coverage is good as well. Now, as far as gaming goes, I was actually really impressed by this for a few reasons. One, there is very, very minimal motion blur with the AMA setting on high. There's the AMA setting, which is your advanced motion control, basically. It's your overdrive. If you set it to premium, it ends up having some color overshoot, which could be distracting. So it can mess up your picture a little bit and cause an issue. You can always mess with it because it depends on what game you play. However, I found that if you leave AMA on high, you get the best performance of motion control, blur control, all that, and you still get really good color reproduction and clarity. So it did really well there. In addition to that, the input lag measures at just over 3 milliseconds. So as far as responding to user input, when you're playing a first-person shooter, that is critical. It has exceptionally low lag there. And when you combine that with your 5 millisecond gray-to-gray response time, you have a pretty good performing monitor for gaming that still excels and does a really good job at content creation, editing, streaming, whatever you're doing. Now, while we're on the note of gaming, I want to talk about HDR. Now, I mentioned this has the VESA HDR 400 certification and HDR10, which is great if you have a gaming console that can take advantage of that. There are also emulated modes with this monitor, and the emulated modes include Display HDR, Game HDRI, and Cinema HDRI. I really like the Game HDRI because it has a good balance of color saturation and brightness without kind of overdoing it. On Cinema, it can really saturate the colors to a point where it kind of changes the look, depending again on what your content is, whether it's a certain movie type, a certain video game. You may like the Cinema HDRI more, or you may even want HDRI off. HDRI is BenQ's intelligent HDR. It's basically an emulated HDR to take content that wasn't originally in that mode and add some more dynamic range to it. So I like that they have that, and I like that you can change it. So you have your real HDR mode and then your two emulated ones, which is your game and cinema. The only thing though that was kind of a turnoff for this, when you first enable HDRI, it's kind of like shows you what the potential is and how good it is. I put it on game mode and I love the picture quality. However, when you use HDRI, which is HDR with intelligence, it uses brightness intelligence as well. We'll talk about that in a moment, but it basically has a light sensor on the bottom here of the monitor. It checks for the conditions in your room and adjusts the brightness or the panel brightness accordingly. The problem is with that is if you don't have a bright room, the screen dims a little bit more aggressively than I like, and you cannot change that profile. So you can't control based off 50% light detection, run at 50% brightness. It has its own fixed brightness level according to the room conditions. I found that it can be a little too aggressive with dimming. When you game at night, you typically don't have a lot of lights on. So the monitor can get a little dark, and because this has a 1001 static contrast ratio, you can lose some details when the brightness starts dropping down. I find that it doesn't quite look the same. I get really excited because when you first enable that mode, you're like, wow, this looks amazing. And then it softens up a little bit because it gets dark. So luckily you could turn them all on and off. Not a lot of companies offer this technology, period. So I don't want to make it seem like a drawback because it's nice that it's there. You may still find that you like it. Conversely, Brightness Intelligent Plus greatly helps eye strain or reduce eye strain because you're not over blaring brightness at your eyes. You're not sending too much out. You don't strain your eyes as much. You don't squint as much. So if the room is darker, it will pull back that brightness, and you should get a really good viewing experience without, again, the pain. This is good for long-term viewing. In addition to that, you have the blue light mode. So if I go through the buttons here, I can change through multimedia, web surfing, office, reading, and e-paper. It dramatically changes the blue light output of the monitor to a point where it is no longer accurate at all. But the intent of that is if you're doing long office work or whatever it is that you're watching or reading, it should help reduce eye strain. So again, it's nice that these features are there. It's not something that because it's there, you should have it on all the time. This is basically a monitor that allows you to calibrate or adjust the behavior of the monitor based off your own preferences and the content you're consuming. And it's very easy to switch. There are controls on the back of the monitor. It's basically like a 5-way joystick. You have your up, down, left, right, and then you press in to enter. And then it has a really nifty remote control. I actually love that it comes with this remote. Just like the EX2780Q that I reviewed, the remote is basically identical. You have your power, your input, your navigation, and I'll see if we can get the camera to focus in on that. So you have your navigation, you have your volume adjustment, blue light control, HDR, brightness intelligence, your sound profile. So if I want to adjust the sound quality of the speakers, you can go through different presets there. So it's capable, it's very easy to use. There's no confusion on the layout. One thing I do want to point out is the sound quality is actually excellent. This uses a Trebolo 2.1 setup. So the reason why you have this big chin here, there's two reasons for it. One is the intelligence bar, if you will, in the center. This has your infrared eye for the remote control and your sensor for your brightness in the room, so it can adjust with the brightness intelligence I talked about earlier. However, it also has a mini sound bar at the bottom. These speakers are arguably the best sounding computer monitor speakers you can buy. Now, it's not saying it's going to sound like a premium sound system by any means, but what I like about it is if you like running a really clean aesthetic in your room and you don't want speakers on the desk because you use headphones a lot and just occasionally need the speakers for, you know, watching the news or, you know, a YouTube video, whatever it may be, it does a really, really good job at producing sound, music, movie content, whatever it is, without being like that annoying tin can sound. Again, this is a monitor speaker, so don't have real soundbar expectations with bass. There's not a subwoofer on the floor. There is a small woofer on the back. It's not going to produce low frequencies, but it makes the monitor sound much more rich. So in this case, the sound profiles on the remote actually does make a difference on the way the speakers sound, because these speakers are a bit more dynamic and lively than your traditional stuff that's on a monitor that usually sounds like crap, to be honest. So this is one of those few cases where the built-in speakers could actually work on their own, especially if you're a primary headphone user. So again, I love that they keep giving you these things to use the monitor in many different ways, and you're not stuck or shoehorned into one particular configuration. So you have your picture settings, you have your emulated HDR, your brightness control, excellent sound quality, etc. Now, where this monitor kind of falls back a little bit, especially when compared to the competition, is the included stand. It's not an issue for me because I use a mount, obviously, because I have all these screens set up here. However, at $800, the stand is very limited. You have tilt control. That's it. I think it's like 15 degrees. It's very small. You can't turn, rotate, or telescope up and down to really get ergonomically the best setup for you. Now, luckily, because of this price point, you can get an ergonomic monitor mount, whether it be a tabletop style one, wall mounts, desk clamp mount, whatever it may be. So you can turn it into a very ergonomic monitor with the correct mount. Just doesn't come with the right mount in the box, to be honest, or stand, I should say. So that's where it falls back a little bit. Now, if I were to compare this monitor to anything else, or what most people would shop this against, it would be the Dell UltraSharp, the U3219Q. That monitor retails for a bit higher price. It retails for $1,050. So for $250 more, what you're getting is a slightly higher contrast ratio, a much better stand. So if you just want an included stand that does telescope and twist, $250 will get you that with the Dell. However, color output is nearly identical. They both have a 95% DCI-P3 color gamut, or color coverage, I should say. Contrast, again, better on the Dell. Brightness is very, very similar to each other. The Dell doesn't have the sound quality that this does, or any of those intelligent lighting features for HDRI, brightness intelligence. However, the Dell with the USB-C port also has a USB 3.0 hub built into it. This one is just USB-C for your monitor output. So naturally, if you want to use peripherals, you still have to connect that to your laptop that's connected to the screen. With the Dell, you can actually have your peripherals connected to it, so single cable. So only reason why you would pay for the Dell is, I guess, if you need that little bit extra contrast, or the stand, or you like the USB hub. Otherwise, the picture quality and performance is very, very similar. And MSRP-wise, this is a better buy because $250 for nearly identical performance. So BenQ has it on the value side. Now, the Dell can go on sale for lower prices sometimes. However, it's always a little bit more than this from what I've seen. I've been really happy with this monitor. I know I kind of talk quickly with this because there's a lot to jam in and I don't want to drag this out too long, but really at the end of the day, it's, you know, at this price range, you kind of just have to pick the features, connectivity that you want and know that you're getting a good screen. So I like that it has the inputs that it has for dual HDMI plus DisplayPort. Because this is a 4K 60 monitor, you don't need HDMI 2.1. With that being said, if you are looking at this and you have an Xbox Series X or a PlayStation 5 and you're looking to take advantage of the best possible gaming performance, this will run no problem on Xbox or PlayStation. However, because it's a 4K 60, that means you won't get 4K at 120 hertz or 120 frames per second. The monitor's not capable of that. Now, it's not to say that that's bad. That's extremely rare. There's only 2 or 3 monitors in existence for gaming, and this is November of 2020. So for what you can buy right now, Asus Element, I think, is still doing pre-orders. I'm not sure, and I thought there was a third coming out, but there are not a lot of good 4K 120 hertz monitors right now, or at least remotely affordable. This monitor is intended more for the content creator, the content consumer. If you watch a lot of movies, if you play games, you know, you use your computer for Netflix, Adobe products, whatever it is, this is kind of like your one monitor that covers the whole range of multimedia while still performing admirably in gaming. So if you can only buy one monitor and you want a really good one without spending thousands and thousands of dollars for a true content creation monitor, this is an excellent value at this price point. I know it's not cheap, but it doesn't mean it's not a good value. So anyway, guys, with that being said, I hope you found this review helpful. If you have any questions, shoot me a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe because we always have new tech coming out. We're talking about monitors. We're doing a lot of audio and gaming, etc. So I'll be happy to answer questions you guys have. Thank you guys so much. I'll have a link in the description below if you want to purchase this through Amazon. It's an affiliate link. Nothing sponsored by BenQ or anything like that. Basically, it's just a generic link for Amazon, and if you buy it, it helps us purchase more products because we want to cover more for you all. So I'll have links for there and the BenQ store. That way you can find it through various vendors. And yeah, thank you guys. I'll see you next time.